Hey y'all, I'm Adam Sandoval. This is my little girl Charlie. Her and I have taken this 45-year-old Trans Am on a cross-country road trip. And in today's video, I'm gonna document exactly how many miles we put down, the problems we had, along with some of the fun and adventure too. Right, girl? There was some fun. There was some fun. It all started when I left my home at the K River Campground in Moyers, Oklahoma, and headed down to Dallas-Fort Worth, where I picked up my buddy Scott from the airport. T-top's leaking. Got this rag on my lap here. I need to find somebody that can give me some new seals. When you're moving, it ain't so bad, but once you stop, yeah, the water starts to come. Wait till we stop. You're gonna get wet, buddy. The trip in total is looking like maybe about 4,000 miles at this point, and it was only fitting that we started it out in really cold, rainy weather. But we hoped as we got to Florida, things would clear up and the weather would get a little better. And once we reached Pensacola, the weather indeed did get better, but that's when we had our very first breakdown of the trip. We started a trend of fixing this 45-year-old car as we drove it across America. Well, it took 2 days before we were broke down on the side of the interstate. Damn bottom just broke off the shock itself. Tomorrow we hunt shocks and we try to fix the car in the parking lot of this hotel. Hopefully they don't throw us out for turning their parking lot into a garage. And then we still got like 5.5 hours on the road tomorrow. And what is my old saying?
If you don't want nothing to happen, stay home on the couch.
That's right. So after towing the car, getting a new tire put on it, getting the car to a hotel parking lot, finding the parts we need, and then fixing them in the parking lot, we were back on the road. But this started a trend that pretty much took over the entire trip. The trip really turned into repairing and building this 45-year-old Trans Am across America. The challenge was finding the places to get it all done. While I was laying in that hotel that night, I came across something I've been looking for since I got this car. I purchased this car off the internet, really sight unseen, just sent a friend to go look at it. It was all the way out in California, and I had it shipped to my house. And when it arrived, there were a few things that weren't as great as maybe I had hoped. One of them being the dash. It had kind of a makeshift cover over it, and it didn't really do it justice. And the plastic mounts that the gauges and everything else went to were deteriorating and falling apart. The car desperately needed a dash. It was held together with bubble gum and string. Finding a dash for these old cars is absolutely impossible. I found a store called National Parts Depot. It was in Ocala, Florida, and it had a brand new complete dash replacement for my car. And hell, we were only 5.5 hours away. So that began a mission of finding a classic car shop that could put me in and get this dash installed overnight. Where are we dropping it off here?
Johnny's Hot Rods and Classics.
In Ocala, Florida.
Ocala, Florida.
You're gonna get me lined out. Check this out. He slid in a brand new dashboard. So you got a fresh dash. I was so glad I found him, and it felt like 100 phone calls to different shops to find somebody that would actually get me in and get the job done. And he really did a great job. The dash looks brand new. This entire piece and all the hardware that goes with it is what was replaced. And it truly feels like quality. Prior to leaving on the trip, I had done a vintage air system, which basically gives old school cars modern day heat and air conditioning. So you've got some decent climate control within your vehicle. I also got all the Dakota digital gauges recalibrated and a little cruise control, although the cruise control still isn't working right. So now the dash is complete and we got the shocks fixed. We're back to the road, but I couldn't hardly leave the National Depot without getting some weather stripping to seal up these T-tops. And while I was at it, I figured I might as well do the doors too. Got all the parts for that, and then we went looking for a shop where I could get that stuff installed, because if you know anything about Florida, it tends to rain a lot. And when it rains hard. So from there we ran and we visited several different motorcycle destinations, really rad spots, in some really cool places like the Cove, and over in Scooter Haven, which is like a biker bar destination. But in between those two places, I noticed my car making a really weird noise at low speed turning. It was making this like clicking, clunking, like almost like loose feeling. So I found a shop, I got it up on a lift, they checked over the whole front end and couldn't find anything wrong. But I had an old friend that didn't live too far away. So I called him up, we went out for dinner and then headed to his house to check it out ourselves and install that weather stripping for, you know, the rate. So now we've got new weather stripping, but we still couldn't figure out what was wrong with the front end. And even worse, a second noise popped up. So now I've got new weather stripping and a weird feeling in the front end and a new noise, none of which I could identify. And to make matters worse, my stereo quit working. So this leads us to our fourth shop to get the stereo fixed. And luckily it was an easy fix, it was like 87 bucks. They rewired a couple things and we were back into having some tunes when we were rolling. But now I'm only a couple hours from Tampa, Florida, where I've got a good friend who has a garage, the Shade Tree Surgeon. Oh, and look at my boy Shade Tree Surgeon in the house. The real mechanic's gonna help me out.
You know how you make a hammer stronger? Here, I'll show you.
Let me see.
Dude, this doubles the strength of a hammer.
Does it?
Oh yeah, dude.
I came to Florida so I could do some shade tree mechanicry. In here helping me keep going down the road, so. And pizza, let's do this. Boy Scott had ran up to Ocala to get the new parts and they forgot to give us a box. Hour and a half each way, 3 hours to get the parts, to get them here today so I could pick up my wife tomorrow night in the car from the airport, T-tops down, her favorite song playing, and spend a couple days with my wife here in Tampa, and we're missing a box. Scott has made it back, buddy. What time did you leave the house this morning?
About 4:15.
Oh my God. So now we're installing the kit. We open up the package, we pull out all of the screws that we need to use, and they sent us one screw smaller than the rest. Dead in the water. We're gonna have to try to figure something out here. My God. Is this story boring you, Charlie? I don't know, but we got the parts in. The car's driving really well, but it needs an alignment from all those adjustments. So luckily we had a friend at a Ford dealership who was able to squeeze us in. Right, we have made it to Gator Ford. And I think finally my baby's gonna be fixed right. It's super low right now. You guys can see how low that is. I think it's a little too low actually. So I'm gonna ask them to raise that up 1 inch on my coilover. Well, now the car's driving perfect except for when it heats up. Once it heats up, I feel that slop and clunking on the low speed turns again. But not when it's cold, only when it's hot. So I thought it must be the front wheel bearings heating up and then creating some sort of slop. Well, I'm only 2.5 hours from Fort Myers, Florida, which is Scott's house, so let's make the road trip to Fort Myers, Florida and put this thing on lifts and replace the wheel bearings. Now I've got fresh wheel bearings. The entire front of this car is 100% brand new, rebuilt. Every bushing, every bearing, new control arms. It's gotta be great, right? Let's take it for a ride. No, it's not great. I still have this sound in it when it warms up. Only on low speed turns though, and it's just got me baffled. So I started the Google to find if anybody else has had this problem and what it could possibly be. I could not believe it, but the only thing I found on there was the rear differential, but it so sounded like the front end. So I thought I'd give it a try. Drain the fluid, change the gasket, clean out the gears and the clutch real good back there because we got posi traction, put it in additive, put in fresh fluid, and take it for a ride. A $65 fix the rear end. No more slop on low turns. It never was in the front end, it was in the rear end. I've spent thousands of dollars and countless hours on repair shops, completely changed my trip. This was supposed to be a trip going to different motorcycle destinations and test riding motorcycles, and it became a shakedown run for an old Trans Am and a build trip where we just built it in different shops all across the country. But now it's running really well, and Charlie and I are headed home to the K River campground back in Moyers, Oklahoma, with another 5 hours left on the road now. And we hope to make it there tonight. We're experiencing a different issue on the way home. When I'm braking, watch this. When I brake, if I brake hard, ooh, the car pulls to the right bad. So I got a sticky caliper or something going on with my brakes. It'll slow down, but it jerks me to the right every time I have to hit the brakes bad. So we're going to probably end up putting new brakes on this thing and going through that rough area. That air ride suspension that I have in the back is not going to do it. So we're going to have to rebuild the suspension too. So if you happen to be a car guy and you give me some advice on what brakes and what rear suspension I should add to this thing, let me know. The LS engine and the transmission, knock on wood, have been running absolutely great. No issues there. Once we get the suspension and the brakes dialed in, I should have a very sound Pro Touring Trans Am that's roadworthy and ready to take on trips anywhere across the country. And you can see we're back into some rain here. And I'm not getting any dripping when we're driving and very, very little dripping when we stop. So the seals worked well, but did not seal it up 100%. It still has a small drip. Yeah, what do you want, man? It's a 45-year-old car and we're driving across country. No matter what happens, I think we're doing pretty damn good. Let's just get it home this last 5.5 hours safely.